This is Spotlight on a Black Night. I'm Daniel Findley, class of 2001 at Robbinsville High School on the Black Knight wrestling team from 97 through 2001. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to be in person with Coach Odom, but he sent me the list of questions, and glad to work through these with you. First question is, how did I get involved in wrestling? My dad took me down to the annual wrestling clinic, and at first certainly felt like a fish out of water. Didn't know any of the moves, didn't know how to duck walk, but the coaches there were patient and worked to teach me the basics and caught on pretty quickly. And struggled for at least the first year, maybe the first couple of years, but then kind of found my groove and was able to be successful in those local tournaments and had a good time and learned how to approach the sport, and that really kind of set the foundation for middle school and high school following up from that. So a great introduction to the sport. As a third grader, a lot of other wrestlers in Robbinsville have had that opportunity, and it's a great way to get to know the sport. How many years did I wrestle? That was from third grade through senior year. What was my best position, top, bottom, or on my feet? Definitely on the mat, top and bottom. That's where I preferred to be. I felt more in control in those positions than on my feet. When I was on bottom, I was going to hit a switch. If that didn't work, I was going to try a stand up from that, and that's pretty much the two moves I used. On top, the stack. Was going to get that wrist control, going to get that 2-on-1, and if you put your head down at all, was going to try and push that under and do the stack. So those were my moves, and certainly top and bottom were where I preferred to be. Who was the drilling partner who made me better? That was Jason Sawyer, otherwise known as Tom. I was in 8th grade. Jason was in 9th grade. Maybe hard to believe, but at that point we were similar in weight, at least similar enough that Coach Beasley asked me to come in and practice with him, be his drilling partner. We had a lot of energy at that time. We were very intense. We'd wrestle for 3 or 4 minutes in a row. And then when we were supposed to be taking a break, we'd jump rope. I think that was mostly just to get under the skin of the older, bigger guys, but we had a good time. We enjoyed doing it. We got a lot better during those days. Beyond that point, our weights diverged pretty quickly, so that was the last time we really drilled together. But we had a good time while it lasted. When did you feel like you turned the corner? I remember it very clearly. It was in 7th grade. Throughout that whole year, I took a lot of losses. A lot of matches ended in the first period for me. It wasn't very pretty, but kept getting better, kept learning moves, kept practicing, kept drilling. By the end of the season at the JV state tournament, ended up in the match for 3rd place, and it just was really starting to click at that point. Was using my spiral ride that we've learned, and set the half in and got a pin in that match, and that was the tournament that it all clicked for me, and that match in particular that made me think, hey, I can do this. This is something that I can learn about, apply it in a match, and then be successful with. So that was really a big turning point for me. What's my favorite memory? I think we tend to think about these memories in terms of those big moments, the big wins, those hard-fought matches, when you have a big upset over someone. And I certainly had some of those. The one that comes to mind is junior year at regionals, the match to go to the state tournament to be a state qualifier, Constellation semifinals, wrestling Jonathan Brady of Cherokee, and just a hard-fought match. We had wrestled, I think, 4 times that year. Every match got closer and closer in score. This match went to overtime. We were both wanted to win. We both wanted to qualify for state. Came away with that win in overtime and was excited to get that match and to get that win and move on to the state tournament again. That was a very tough weight class. I'll talk about it in just a minute. One of the better guys that I beat ended up being very successful in NCAA, was an All-American, his current coach at UNCG. Didn't actually make it to state that year. The weight class was so tough. In the end, though, I think it's a lot of the little things that end up being more important to me now, having the ability to look back almost 20 years ago to some of those matches, to those times, and it's the friendships that you develop. Jason and I really started as drilling partners. We were roommates at Iowa's 2-week intensive training camp, and we had this bond that I hope will last the rest of our lives. Certainly, stay in touch and glad to be friends and continue to have that bond with him over all the sacrifice that we did on the wrestling mats, practice, tournaments. And the other thing I think of, those small things. Most wrestlers have superstitions. I certainly did. My dad would always help me warm up. We'd do the same routine. My sister would always take my warm-up gear. She'd wear my hat. She'd wear my jacket, my shorts while I was wrestling. And my mom would always be recording. My sister Amy would always be there cheering me on as well. So just having my family there. Great memories looking back at the pictures. It's so fun to see. My dad was always taking pictures, and my mom would be on the other side of the mat recording. So in the pictures, you can see her recording, and in the video, you can see him taking pictures. This set of questions gave me a chance to look back at some of the old videos and some of the old pictures, and I saw one where I got a takedown in overtime right at the side of the mat, right where my dad was. He was right there. He was pumped. He was so excited for me, and it was fun just to see the look of joy on his face and how excited he was for me being successful with that overtime takedown. Also remember another one that's maybe not a pleasant memory, but in the end it was pretty funny. We showed up at school at 4:30 in the morning to make it to a tournament in Hendersonville on time for weigh-ins. We get there, the bus doesn't have heat, so we made the decision either go to the tournament and it's cold the whole way, or you miss the tournament because there was no getting a replacement bus at that time in the morning. So we drove to Hendersonville with no heat. It's January, so it was pretty chilly on that bus. Just making it through that was pretty funny looking back in hindsight. What's my worst memory? It's really those times when you felt like you didn't give it all, when you could have done more, when you could have done better, that you end up regretting getting beat by somebody who was good, but if you would have put forth the maximum effort, you could have came away with the win. I ended up being most disappointed in my senior year. My last match ended up with a medical default. Didn't get to finish the match. Very disappointing to put in all that training, all that effort, and then end in a way where I didn't get a chance to leave it all on the mat. Ended up not being able to finish that match was very disappointing. And whether or not you win, if you can leave knowing that you did everything you can, I think it's a much more satisfying feeling than not being able to finish it. What food did I miss the most during wrestling season? I gave up ice cream as just a form of sacrifice from the end of my junior season through my senior season wrestling, and so I think cravings for ice cream certainly haven't gone away, and certainly a treat to indulge in occasionally. My biggest win, and I'm going to frame this as probably the person I wrestled who ended up being the best. That was Darren Burns from Bandy's High School. My junior year at regionals, came away with a very close win. He was a freshman, probably the only reason why I was able to win that match. He ended up being a multi-time state champion. Was a 2-time NCAA All-American, or maybe was one match away from that All-American status, and he's the coach at UNCG today. So he was a very successful wrestler. Glad I caught him early in his career. His freshman year, I think the outcome would have been much different if he was a little bit older. Who was the toughest kid I ever wrestled? Has to be Nick Gates from West Henderson. I caught him when he was a senior. I was a freshman. I think it was a first period match. Didn't last very long. Went as most people would predict. He was a multi-time state champion. Was very deliberate. Did the things well that you need to be successful. What are you currently doing? I'm a researcher and professor at NC State University in transportation and civil engineering. What song did you listen to that got you most jacked up for a match? That'd be Back in Black by AC/DC. I thought it was a great song. I always felt like it had a connection and was written for the Black Knights, and just enjoyed that song for warming up. Any notable accomplishments on the mat? I'm probably most proud of being Iron Man for 3 years. That means giving up no pins, not missing any practices. Actually looked back and I went 124 matches from my freshman year through my senior year without giving up a pin. I was also a 3-time state qualifier and a 3-time conference champion. And another thing that was pretty interesting looking back at the accomplishments, I was able to get awarded 3 MOWs my senior year, one at the Osley B in Cherokee, one at the Far West, and one at the Smoky Mountain Conference Tournament. That year, the Smoky Mountain Conference Tournament was in Robbinsville, so 2 of those awards came on our home mat, so that was pretty special to get both of those awards from Coach Wilson in our own gym. I had 42 wins my senior year. That was the first one at Robbinsville to hit the 40-win mark. The reason why it was special to me, I was trying to match James Orr's career win record. At the time, he was the leader with 124 wins. I knew I would be close if I could win all the matches I thought I could, although I came 1 short. I ended up with 123 wins, just 1 match, 1 win shy of tying his record, which would have been nice to do, but wasn't able to make that happen. Off the mat, I'm proud of being the valedictorian for the class of 2001 at Robbinsville High School. Went on to earn a bachelor's, a master's, and a PhD in civil engineering. And through that work in my current job, I've been able to do a lot of interesting research and do teaching at NC State. Had the chance to travel to Australia, Spain, the United Arab Emirates, and the Czech Republic to teach and do research. And I've also published over 30 peer-reviewed journal articles and 2 textbooks. I've traveled some with work, and we also like to personally travel. My wife and I have been a lot of places, a lot of fun places. Our goal is to see the new 7 wonders of the world. We have 1 of those left to see. Some of the things we've had the chance to do, we've been inside the Great Pyramid in Egypt. We've surfed at Bondi Beach in Sydney, Australia, floated on the Dead Sea. We've seen the Terracotta Warriors and hiked the Great Wall in China, and most recently fished for piranha in the Amazon River. So I had the opportunity to do a lot of fun and interesting things around the world. Any regrets? If you could give your past self advice or change one thing, what would it be? I wish I would have taken a larger leadership role in recruiting. We had a lot of great athletes in the high school at the time who weren't wrestling, and I think they could have been successful on the mat. And I wish I would have pushed harder to get them out to join the team, to make me better, to make our team better, and just to help develop themselves as leaders. And I wish I would have maybe paused long enough at certain points just to soak in the moments, take in the memories, consider the sacrifice and the effort that I was putting forward, and make sure I really remember those and cherish those memories into the future. It's not really a regret, but something I wish I would have spent more time thinking about. I started out my senior year at 160, went the first 15 or 18 matches without a loss, got beat in the finals of a tournament by a guy who ended up being a 3A state champion at 160, and for some reason I thought I just needed to drop to a lower weight, so I ended up dropping to 152. I think in hindsight it probably would have been better if I would have stuck with my strength, stayed at 160, been confident in that, knowing that I could wrestle my match and be successful there at 160. So I wish I would have thought about it a little bit more and possibly considered staying at 160 instead of dropping down to 152 that year. What lessons did you learn from wrestling that you apply to your life now? I think grit's a big one. I think it's one of the most underappreciated factors in today's society, just being able to stick with something. It's going to be painful, it's going to hurt, you're going to feel underappreciated, but knowing that you're working towards something and be able to just stick it out and make it happen, I think is a great quality that wrestling helps instill in people who participate in the sport. Being deliberate is another thing, thinking about what you do, making it happen, knowing that you've got a weight you need to make, or knowing that you've got to be prepared physically with your conditioning, with your technique, other things, and being able to make those things happen in a deliberate process is very important. Delayed gratification is another thing, working for months for something that may or may not happen. You have a goal as a state championship or a conference championship or wherever it may be, and knowing that you've got to put yourself through a lot of work, through a lot of trials to try and make that happen, to try to get on the mat and be successful. What advice would you give to future wrestlers? I'd advise to keep some perspective about what you're doing and why you're doing it. This is a great opportunity to learn how to improve, to learn how to fail, to learn how to learn from that failure, to figure out that no two people have the same path. You got to be on your own path. You got to make your own opportunities if you're going to be successful. You can't be explicit. You can't be explicit about the times and events that you'll learn from, but you can put yourself in a position to have these experiences by having a positive attitude. You can be open to them. So going to camps, going to more matches, going to tournaments, giving yourself the experience to learn from those is very important. Having a positive attitude, knowing that you can get better, is a very important thing. You won't know what experiences and opportunities will be the most enriching. So sometimes you have to put yourself out there. You got to try some things. You've got to go away to a camp. You've got to go away to tournaments and just try things out and test yourself. So let someday be today. Get out there and do it. Today's the day. Don't wait. Start taking those steps to meet your goal. And I think the wonderful thing about wrestling is it doesn't require a lot of natural athletic talent. If you put that work in, you can make things happen. And if you think about those characteristics and you get those characteristics in people and they're on your team, that's what you're going to need to be successful. And some of those characteristics are just being prepared, being on time, giving your best and maximum effort every single time, having a positive attitude, being coachable, and taking initiative. Those are all things that don't require athletic ability, any athletic talent. You just need to put forth that effort and you can be successful and put in the steps to be successful. Any shout outs or anything about the sport of wrestling you want people to know? I couldn't have done it without my family. My sisters being there supporting me, Julie taking care of my gear when I was wrestling, Amy cheering me on. My parents, they took me to so many tournaments when I was in 8th grade, helped me get that experience that I needed to be successful in high school, helped me learn how to lose, helped me to learn how to wrestle and be confident with my own wrestling style. Couldn't have and wouldn't have done it without them, so biggest shout out to them. Tom as my drilling partner, and then a co-captain and somebody that was just as passionate about the sport as I was. It was great to have that comrade as we went through the sport together. A lot of the amazing coaches who sacrificed their time and energy and money to get us involved in the sport and to help us try to be successful. It's a long list. There's lots of people who helped. Coach Wilson, Coach Hyde, Coach Beasley, Coach Trammell, Coach Hooper, Coach Oliver, a lot of the older guys that came back into the room to help teach us some moves, help us get better. Many other assistant coaches, thanks to all of them for what they did and paying it forward with some of the younger guys. Wrestling is a sport that's not for everyone, but the amazing thing is that all different types can be successful at it. You can be long and lanky, you can be short and stocky. Both those body types can be successful in wrestling. It's not one particular body type that's necessarily favored over another. If you put in the work, you can do it. There's no one single recipe for success, which I've always found pretty appealing. You can look at two guys, and the guy you think may be the strongest or the fastest or the most cut, he may not win. It's a lot about the heart at the end of the day, and the wrestler with the biggest heart a lot of times is going to come across victorious. If you've made it through that season of wrestling, you've really done something, and you've done something you can be proud of. For the general public, I'd like them to know how the sport of wrestling can help build people into people that we want in our society. It's more than just a sport. It really builds a lot of nice characteristics that are important in our society, I think can be helpful for the general public. For parents, I think it's incredibly valuable as a sport because today's society, today's world is very comfortable. It's very possible to go through with very little even inconvenience. And so I think it's nice to kind of force some of that upon ourselves, force some difficulty, help develop some of those skills, help develop grit, help develop some determination. And it's a great sport for testing who we are. It's a one-on-one matchup. It's all out there on the mat. It's all out for people to see. It's all out in the open. And I think it's just a great way to build up a lot of skills, to sharpen those skills that we want in our kids and give them the confidence that when things in life get difficult, because life is not easy, they have something to look back on and have that grit, and they can reach down and rely on something that they've developed through the sport of wrestling. Hope those answers to the questions are helpful or useful. You may find them that way or not. Go Knights. Hope you continue to be successful. I love watching and keeping track of the Black Knights and seeing those wins continue to pile up.